All right, hi there, grade 11 biology students. Welcome to the blood unit. So in our curriculum, this unit is called transportation and respiration. So it's going to include blood, circulation, and respiration. So I usually break it down into 3 sections. So the blood section, the circulation section, and the respiration section. But as you can see as we go through the notes, they're all very much intertwined together. So on the first page here, you can see that I've got all the definitions that are required for the first page in your booklet. So make sure you either take a second and pause the video and kind of copy them down, or use the glossary that I handed out in class to copy those down. So again, we're going to divide this up into blood, circulation, and respiration. So this blood section is going to take about a week for us to do. Now this booklet's set up a little bit different. It's not exactly the same. The notes I'm going to put on the board aren't exactly the same as the ones in your booklet. So I've tried to kind of highlight the stuff in blue or whichever else. If you get really confused about what's supposed to go in those blanks, you can flip into our Teams page and look in the files category in this section, and I've got the notes just kind of typed up for you. So blood's a liquid connective tissue. And it functions to transport, so this would be oxygen, carbon dioxide, waste. We just finished digestion, so we talked about, the nutrients like glucose and amino acids being absorbed by the villi into the bloodstream. Well, these are going into the blood for transportation around your body to all your cells. Your blood helps to, clot if you get a cut or a bruise. It'll seal itself up. And it helps to fight infections. And fighting infections has this little star beside it because we're going to mention it now, but we're going to talk about immunity as one of our last units of the course. So blood got 2 main sections. So we've got the plasma section, which is the liquid part, and that's about 55%. And then the formed elements are the solid portion of your blood, and that makes up about 45% of your blood. So if we were to put blood in a test tube, and we were able to stop it from clotting, then it would naturally separate out into those distinct parts. Okay, so again, you're filling in your notes on page 4, and the red highlights are what you're filling in your blanks. I'm just going to scroll down and show you a picture. So on the left-hand side here, we've got a picture of blood kind of in a test tube. And the yellow part on the top, that's your plasma. Then we've got your white blood cells and your platelets, that's less than 1% of your blood. And then the red part on the bottom, those are your red blood cells. So the white blood cells, the platelets, and your red blood cells, those are your formed elements. And over on the right-hand side, we've got an actual photograph. So often when they take your blood, we can't store it as, like this. So they centrifuge it out and split it into the plasma and those formed elements. So your plasma is made up mostly of water, so about 90% water. It's made of organic substances. So remember, organic in biology means carbon-containing and inorganic substances. And it also contains proteins in the plasma. And these proteins help to transport large organic molecules around. It helps to regulate osmotic pressure, which is our water pressure. And it helps to fight infection and helps to clot your blood. Next time you come to class, we're going to talk about Canadian Blood Services, and I'll link you to their website, and we'll show a couple of videos on that. So this picture here is from the Canadian Blood Services website, and it shows a bag kind of being separated into its component parts. So there's packed red cells, platelets, and then plasma. So those formed elements, this is the solid portion of your blood, are made up of erythrocytes. So these are your red blood cells, and you need to know that fancy science word. You need to understand the term erythrocytes is your red blood cells. And red blood cells, I often get lazy and just abbreviated RBC. That does not mean the Royal Bank of Canada. Leukocytes are your white blood cells. Again, I get lazy and I abbreviate it WBC. And our thrombocytes are our platelets. Now you'll notice all 3 of those words end in the word cytes, and cyte means cell. Our red blood cells, our erythrocytes, are made in red bone marrow of our skulls, ribs, and vertebrae, and our long bone ends. So I've kind of drawn a picture here of what looks like a dog bone. And if I cut it open down this line I've got here, and I look in the center, I've got the hard kind of calcified part around the edges, and our bone marrow is that spongy center of our bone. It Your erythrocytes transport oxygen, and they help move carbon dioxide with the help of hemoglobin. And they look like a jelly donut with kind of the center squished out of them. So they look like the picture here. And if I was to kind of look at the side, it would look like this kind of blue swiggle that I've drawn up here. So we're just going to pop on to the next page. Interesting facts about red blood cells is they're one of the only cells in the body that as they mature, they lose their nucleus. And remember, the nucleus is the brain of the cell. They only live for about 120 days, so kind of 4 months. So this is why there's a waiting period for when you donate blood. You have to wait kind of 3 months or so before you can donate again, because it takes time to build your red blood cells back up. White blood cells, these are your leukocytes. These are formed in your bone marrow and your lymphoid tissue. They have lots of different structures, and we'll look at these a little bit more when we talk about immunity at the end of the course, but they're all quite large and mostly translucent. So I'm not sure if during COVID we'll get a chance to look at the microscopes, but if we were to look under a microscope at a slide of kind of your human blood, the red blood cells would look red, but the white blood cells would be actually stained. They would look purple, and it's because they're translucent. They're see-through, so if we didn't put a red or purple stain on them, you wouldn't be able to see them at all on the microscope slide. So they function to digest invaders. So some of your white blood cells are just patrolling around in your blood, and they're like Pac-Man eating the ghost, right? If they come across a bacteria, they just, we learned the term phagocytosis in the first unit. They phagocytize that bacterial cell, and they kind of just ingest it. Some of them are going to make antibodies to help fight infection, and others are going to release chemicals. And sometimes those chemicals are like, hey, over here, I've got something. We've got a virus. Come on, help me fight it. So they serve to kind of sound the alarm out that something's not right in our bodies. So for every one white blood cell that's, again, really large, there's about 500 to 600 red blood cells. Platelets, these are also, again, called thrombocytes. They're made from fragmented large cells in our red bone marrow. So they look like little plates. And so for every 400 or 500 red blood cells, there's about 40 platelets. So I've just drawn in blue here. For every one white blood cell, there's about 500 red blood cells and about 40 platelets. So there's the fewest white blood cells, the most red blood cells, and platelets are in the middle. So again, platelets help to clot your blood. So you have 12 clotting factors, and these kind of cause a chain reaction that basically results in fibrin creating a web at the wound site. So it kind of, you can almost think of it like a spider web. It starts to weave together, and that helps trap red blood cells, and that's kind of why scabs are red. So this diagram, when you do task 1, you might want to refer back to this. White blood cells are the largest, while platelets are the smallest, and white blood cells and red blood cells are in the middle. Okay, so this is 0.5 millimeter, this whole thing. So white blood cells would be about 1/2 of that 0.5 millimeter. Red blood cells would be about 1/4 of that 0.5 millimeter, and platelets are somewhere even smaller than that. So what I want you to do now is, in your booklet on page 6, you can fill in the blood characteristics chart with the information from your notes. Thanks for listening.